So healthy relationships. I'm very much looking forward to sharing some ideas with you throughout the month of February on relationships. I do think it's one of the most important areas to put our attention, our mind, our heart, and our talent and skills. And whether we consider ourselves to be someone that is very skillful in relationships, someone who has a lot of healthy and strong relationships, what I believe is we can always get even better. And if you're someone who is really struggling, maybe with a relationship at home, or a relationship at work, or a relationship with a friend, these ideas that we'll be sharing and thinking about over these next 4 weeks can absolutely help you to get better in your relationships. Healthy relationships, foundations of them. Today, we're going to take a look at these 3 things, knowing what healthy relationships look like. Got to have a picture in our mind of what they look like, kind of a starting point to make sure that we're all somewhat on the same page with that. So knowing what healthy relationships look like. Number 2, identifying the basic principles that underlie all healthy relationships. And 3, the role of self-awareness and skill building in our behaviors, all of which are part of forming the foundation of healthy relationships. If you think about it, when we just take, for example, the kinds of songs that we hear on relationships, would you say that most of the songs we hear on relationships are describing healthy relationships? No, quite the opposite, right? Usually very dysfunctional relationships that are really more like an addiction or a dependency or a codependency, but not a healthy, mature relationship. When we think of some of the movies even that we see, or the stories or books that maybe become popular, we don't necessarily have a whole lot of focus on healthy relationships. And maybe that's because there's not as much drama in them, right? Maybe that's in part because there's not as much drama in them. But yet I think relationship is such a key part of life. And in many ways, if we think about it, relationship affects everything. We have relationships with people. We have relationships with our thoughts. We have relationships with our memories. We have relationships with events and opportunities and things. And we have a relationship with God or spirit. We have relationships with everything. And so understanding, at least on the human level, what a healthy relationship looks like is important. So when I say to you, what does a healthy relationship look like? I want to pause for a moment and give you a chance just to kind of identify that for yourself. What do you think a healthy relationship looks like? What does it look like? Anyone want to venture an idea or two of what a healthy relationship looks like? Mutual respect. Equality, caring, loving. Say again? Faithful. Safe. Oh, absolutely. Where
the other person feels free.
Right, like Thich Nhat Hanh spoke about with the idea of love, where the other person feels free. Say again? Unconditional, yes. So boy, you've got lots of ideas. Give and take. So a lot of the things that you just kind of shared with us this morning are many of the things that I've put down as well. And I think being able to be clear in our minds and remember what a healthy relationship looks like is foundational to building healthy relationships and to sustaining them. Some of the things I put down was mutual respect for one's individuality, one's needs, one's feelings. No imbalance of power, that's like equality, right? Not an imbalance of power. Openness, vulnerability, right? In a healthy relationship, you can be your authentic self. You can be vulnerable in that relationship. There's openness, there's honesty, there's reciprocity, the give and take that one of you shared. There's shared responsibility for the relationship. When I perform weddings, I always include the idea that marriage is not a 50-50 proposition. If you go into it that way, it ain't gonna last very long. It's gotta be 100% both ways. Both ways. It's not about keeping score. And yet there needs to be some sense of reciprocity in there, some feeling of give and take. There are positive interactions in a healthy relationship. There's certainly healthy boundaries in a healthy relationship. Now flip it for a moment and think for a moment, what are signs? What does an unhealthy relationship look like? Codependent, I hear. Conflict. Although even in a healthy relationship, you certainly can have conflict. It's how do you have skillful practices to deal with that conflict, and what is your motivation in dealing with the conflict? There can be an abuse of power, right? Right? What else in an unhealthy relationship? Huh? Closed heart, yeah. Yeah, keeping score, resentment, lack of forgiveness, criticalness. So, huh? Jealousy, yes. Yes. So we have a sense of what a healthy relationship looks like, and we certainly have a sense and pictures of what an unhealthy relationship looks like. What is it that we want more of in our lives? Certainly healthy relationships, right? We want relationships that are joyful, that feel good. And there are certainly many benefits to healthy relationships. I think we are aware of that even more now, having experienced as a world the results of being in lockdown during the pandemic, when we were deprived of the experience of natural connection, physical connection with one another. If you're paying attention to news and reading articles about what's emerging in psychology, you're reading and hearing more and more about the significant numbers of people today that are dealing with loneliness and depression that sometimes is a direct result of that people are needing a healthy connection with one another. And that when we have that, we do better physically, mentally, and emotionally. That our healthy relationships feed us fully and completely. That even though we may consider ourselves to be an introvert, I'm an introvert, even though we may consider ourselves to be more private and like a lot of our alone time, that's certainly true of myself, and I imagine some of you as well, that does not mean that we still don't have a basic human need to connect with one another, to have solid, good, healthy relationships with each other. I was smiling the other day as I was on my morning walk and I was listening to NPR that morning, and I was hearing of a brand new salon in Coronado, a hair salon called Salon on First. And the reason that they were in the news is they are the first hair salon to have a special certification. They are certified now as a community care salon, meaning that their stylists have gone through a program. I don't know what the program is. I imagine I could figure it out. But their stylists have gone through a program to help them be more skilled in being compassionate and helping to create community for the person sitting in their chair, because there seems to be such a need for people to have safe and meaningful interaction with other people. I think that's a fantastic idea, a fantastic idea. But it also causes me to say, well, wait a minute. That's what our faith communities really ought to be, right? That it ought to be a place, and I think that unity is that, ought to be a place where we feel in relationship with each other, the kinds of relationships that lift us up, that help us to feel stronger, that help us to have greater sense of purpose and self-esteem. The benefits of healthy and solid relationships are the feelings of joy, the feeling that you've got someone that you can turn to when you're struggling with someone or someone or something, that you've got a relationship that can help build you up when maybe your confidence is a little shaken because maybe you've just broken up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner, or maybe you've just lost your job and you need that reminder from another person. Hey, you're going to be okay, like the song that we were just listening to, right? Jesus and Buddha modeled healthy relationships. Jesus, when he began his ministry, called 12 very unusual men to be by his side, to study with him, to learn with him from all different walks of life. He was very inclusive in that regard. We know that he socialized with, spent time with, lifted up the marginalized. We know that he talked about love. He said to love as he had loved his disciples, to love one another in that way. He had friends, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. They were his friends. When he sent his disciples out to share his teachings, he didn't send them out to convert the world to his way of being. He sent them out to share something. But he sent them out by twos. Why do you think he did that? Because it would be easier. Pretty much anything we do can be easier when we do it in partnership with another. The Buddha encouraged his disciples. The Buddha taught and cared about his disciples. The Buddha returned home to share his insights, his enlightenment after he was enlightened. Relationships, healthy relationships. I figure if Jesus needed them, I need them too. I figure if the Buddha needed them, I need them too. And how can I do a better job? How can you do a better job? So here are, I guess I already gave you the first one. Yes, what do healthy relationships look like? So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the basic principles that underlie relationship. And I want you to kind of think, I'm not going to ask for your response here, but think about what you believe are some of the basic principles that underlie healthy relationships. What's really important for a relationship to be healthy? Say? Caring, for sure. I think trust is perhaps at the top of the list. Trust. And how do we get trust? We get trust by being trustworthy. Trustworthy. I think trust is a foundational quality in relationships. Trust is the belief that I have about you that you are not going to do me harm, that your intention is to be supportive and caring and kind. It is my belief that you will be honest with me, that I can count on you, that if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do that something. And the more times we act in a trustworthy way in a relationship, the more solid the foundation of that relationship is. In many ways, this is my personal belief, but in many ways, I believe that it is much easier to get love back in a relationship, especially in an intimate relationship, to get love back in a relationship than trust. That it can be a much tougher road in a relationship to get trust back. And so the foundation of trustworthiness in a relationship is key to building and maintaining and sustaining our relationships in a healthy way. I think another very foundational premise and principle is the idea of respect in relationship. that I value you and I respect you. It doesn't mean that I will always agree with you. I may not agree with you. I may not understand you all the time. I may not even like you all the time. And the same could be true of you to me. But I still treat you with dignity and respect. I recognize that you are a child of the infinite, a child of God, a child of the divine, whatever term you're most comfortable with there, just as I am. And so you are worthy of my attention. You are worthy of my patience. You are worthy of my understanding. You are worthy of my tolerance. You are worthy of my compassion. So trust, respect. Communication is foundational in a healthy relationship. And it's a skill that not too many people are blessed to grow up with excellent models of it when it comes to relationships. We may not have seen it modeled very effectively in our families, and if we did, that's a wonderful advantage that you have over many people who don't have that. We may not have experienced it in our classrooms or in our places of employment. And so we may not have very good understanding of what healthy communication is. Sometimes it does have to do with conflict. The skillful ability to express one's thoughts and feelings in a clear and compassionate way. I'm going to repeat that. The kind of communication that I'm talking about in regard to healthy relationships is the skillful ability to express one's thoughts and feelings in a clear and compassionate way, and the ability and willingness to listen equally. To listen equally. And of course, love. Love is not a feeling. We get into trouble when we think of love as a feeling. Love is a behavior. Love is a verb, at least the love that is talked about spiritually. In the Bible, there are the word love that we translate and we just see the word love. There were 4, particularly in the New Testament that was largely written down in Greek from the Aramaic. You had 4 words for love. And the kind of love that Jesus was speaking about when he's talking about love God with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your soul, wasn't a feeling. When he talked about to love one another as I have loved you, he wasn't talking about a feeling. He was talking about a set of behaviors, a way of being. It's what's referred to as agape love. Agape love. Behavior is a choice. Behavior is a choice. Agape love is not a feeling, it's a choice. And if you doubt that, pick up a Bible if you have one and read 1 Corinthians 13. And you will read these words: love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's not a set of feelings. That's a set of behaviors. Think about that for a moment. Patience is a behavior. Kindness is a behavior. Being not easily angered is a behavior. Is a behavior. Love as a verb, agape love, a choice, a decision. Communicating, trusting, respect, trustworthiness. I've had an experience that I want to share with you because I think it's quite fitting here, and it has to do with the importance of communication in relationships. So if you were here a couple of Sundays ago, I told you very, very briefly about my new colored arm. But I want to tell you a little bit more because there's a bit of a story here that has to do with communication. So a little more than 2 weeks ago, I was going out to get my mail. A dog I did not recognize was in my front yard, had a collar on, so I thought, oh, I'm going to try to go up to that dog because I love dogs, and I thought maybe this dog is out loose and maybe I should try to catch this dog because clearly somebody's going to be looking for it. Well, this dog had other thoughts. And those thoughts included that for some reason, he wanted to attack me. And so he came at me quite aggressively, and I started to back away slowly. He started to come more. His mouth was open. He was snarling. He was growling. I thought, you better get out of here. He's bigger than you. You're not going to win. And I did not want to turn my back on him because I was afraid that if I did, he would jump on me and then I wouldn't have a chance. So in backing up, I fell down and took a pretty hard fall and just got a fracture on my wrist. So come to find out that the dog was being watched by a neighbor of mine, a neighbor that we like very much, a neighbor of mine, and the dog had just gotten out. And I didn't know that, and they didn't know that the dog was could be aggressive. And so they wrote me a little card and brought me had their son make some cookies. But the response left me feeling concerned. The response sounded like the response you would get for one of two reasons. Either because they didn't see what had happened, either they didn't know that the dog was trying to attack me, and therefore they had a potential problem on their hands with this dog, or they were afraid that I was going to take some legal action because the text I had gotten and the card I had gotten was like, oh, so sorry that you're hurt, but no acknowledgement at all of the fact that I would not have this had that dog not gotten out on my property and had I not been forced to try to get away and unfortunately fell. So I kept going back and forth in my mind. What do I do? Why do I feel unsettled about this? It was an accident. It really, really is inconvenient. I've had to do a whole lot of workarounds, work-wise and home-wise, and I'm not used to asking for help for just like very basic things. So I was struggling with, do I say anything? Communication. Be very easy to say nothing at all. And then last Sunday, one of our members, and I don't know if she's here today, talked to me afterwards and said, I really think are you going to go talk to them? And I said, I'm not so sure. And that person's concern was, do they know that this dog tried to attack you? And there are problems when dogs are unleashed and out that they can hurt people. And so are you going to say anything? I hope you do. And so that was lingering in my mind. And then I talked it over with John, and I talked it over with my son. And my son asked a good question. He said, what do you hope to gain? What's your ask? And I thought, what's my ask? I'm not asking for anything. And then I thought, no, I am asking for something. Communication. I'm asking to be understood. I'm asking to know what they knew. I'm asking to know where the dog is. And I'm asking for some understanding. I was hoping for some accountability as well. I knew it was going to be a difficult communication. Can you imagine? Right? Difficult to request it in person. You do not do these things via text. You don't do them via phone call. You do them if physically you're in the same area, you have difficult conversations in person. It makes it a little more difficult, but it makes them more real. So I invited them over to my home, and we met on Friday. They did not know that the dog had tried to attack me. They did know that my wrist was fractured. They did know a little bit about what that meant for ski season and work and all of these other things. They took complete responsibility. But I nailed it, because the reason they didn't take responsibility initially was they went right to fear that we were going to sue them. As soon as I heard that, I put my arms around her, said, that's not what this is about at all. I needed to let you know, in case you've never had to deal with something like this when you're still working, I needed you to know what it's like. I needed to be heard, not in a complaining way, hopefully it didn't feel that way, but in a way to build trust and rapport and to say, I don't hold any ill will, but I am surprised that you didn't say anything about taking responsibility. They quickly acknowledged that. That to me is, a real example of what communication looks like. It isn't comfortable. It probably, I'm sure they were not comfortable coming over. Their attorney, they had already called their attorney. Their attorney said, do talk to them. Give them whatever they want. Don't have them do anything with your homeowners association or your homeowners insurance. I thought, gosh, I'm so sorry you went through all of that, because that's not where my mind was at all. Communication means we know ourselves well enough. We're willing to value the relationship enough to hold the conversations that might be difficult to have and might be difficult to hear. I give them a heck of a lot of credit for coming over. They did not know what they were walking into, and yet they made the right choice. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here? About what it looks like, and that's one of many kinds of different ways healthy communication plays out, but it's such an important part of relationships. I know that whatever friendship we had prior to this, or neighborly relationship, it wasn't so much friendship, probably is moving into a friendship because of a genuine connection, being vulnerable, being honest, respecting the other, being trustworthy. These are the kinds of behaviors, they are choices, behaviors that help us to have solid relationships. The last idea I want to share with you is the role of self-awareness, and skill building is key. We've got to know ourselves. And we're in a teaching that really encourages us to understand what's going on, to pay attention to what we're thinking, to pay attention to what we're feeling, to recognize where we have a gap in our skill set and where maybe we need to learn how to practice how to be a better listener or how to be a more honest, authentic communicator. When we can recognize where our gaps are, and I'll tell you, if you don't recognize where your gaps are, I promise you, if you ask your partner, they will tell you. So you can't say, I don't know. I promise you, there's someone in your life that you can ask, and hopefully it is someone that has no ulterior motive, that would genuinely share with you, well, Wendy, I think here's where maybe there's a gap, at least in my experience of you, right? So when we know what our gaps are, then it becomes kind of easy. All we have to do is figure out, what's the answer to filling that gap? Is there a skill I have to learn? Do I just need to learn how to be a better listener? Do I need to learn how to connect with my heart and be a little more compassionate? Do I need to remember that, in the end, we're all in this together, right? Whatever the gap is, there's a way for you to learn the skills to bridge that gap. And that will go a long way to building healthier relationships. I want to leave you with this, because this is to me, a very important model. Whenever we make a decision to learn a new behavior, the learning of that new behavior goes basically like this in 4 phases. The first is unconscious and unskilled. So let's say the behavior I want to improve in myself is to be a genuine listener. So in the beginning, I'm unconscious and unskilled, meaning that I didn't know I was a bad listener But I asked that friend of mine, and I said, you know what, you always interrupt. You're not a very good listener. So up until that point, I was what? I was unconscious and I was unskilled. Then the second is conscious and unskilled. My friend just told me, you're not a very good listener. Now I'm conscious. I'm aware of that input. I'm going to do better, but I am kind of unskilled. I catch myself going, oh, there I go again. I started to interrupt or whatever, right? Then with practice, making better and different choices, the behavior becomes conscious and skilled. I'm conscious of what I'm doing, and I'm skillful now at what I'm doing. But there's still effort involved until we move into the final, which is unconscious and skilled, which means I am now a skillful listener, and I don't even have to think about it anymore because I've practiced it so much that it's my natural way of showing up when there's an important conversation. You know, listening is one of the most powerful ways that we honor another person. We recognize their value and their worth. So I hope that there's at least one or two ideas that kind of got you this morning that are things that can be helpful to you in either improving or maintaining your relationships on the healthiest level, knowing what healthy relationships look like, identifying the basic principles that underlie all healthy relationships, and the role of self-awareness and skill building. Namaste.